Which is better for short runs, Gravure or Flexo? When we discuss Gravure's competitiveness compared to Flexo, one topic always comes up: short runs. And at this stage, let me repeat, why do we actually talk about Flexo versus Gravure? I know all these technologies out there are actually there to complement each other, right? But there is one main difference. Why don't we compare Gravure versus offset or digital? Because within digital, offset, and let's say Gravure and Flexo, there is most of the times a clear distinction where those technologies are most efficient and where there's actually a break-even point to use one or another. So when would you consider switching to Gravure? When would you consider switching from digital to offset or offset to Flexo or Gravure? Also in terms of the substrates and everything. But within Flexo and Gravure, those two technologies are quite competitive against each other because they share a broad portfolio in terms of substrate and the lengths of the jobs. That's why we often talk about which is better, Gravure or Flexo. And also within those two technologies, there are definitely products specifically designed to be more effective in Gravure, and the same speaks to Flexo. And here is one fact that you and I can definitely agree on. The longer the job length in terms of square meters printed, the more favorable Gravure becomes. However, Flexo is competing on a very high level regarding short runs. If you have to switch from one job to the other quite often during your production day due to very short jobs, one question becomes important. But it's a bit under-discussed, underestimated, because we are talking about the total lifetime volume of the design. Or are we talking about the job lengths of maybe the first production run only, without actually considering the second, third, and fourth production run? Because actually, sometimes, and you will experience this basically all the time with your customers, the brands will place the very first job only. And they might order a second, third, fifth job for the same design. And how does that fit into this consideration? Well, think about it this way. Do you only print a job, a design, once for, let's say, 30,000 meters? It doesn't really matter, just to get an idea of square meters or meters. Or do you print the same job many times for less than 30,000? Well, that actually makes a difference, right? Because you might be able to print a job, a design several times with a Gravure cylinder. But you might not be able to do that with a Flexo plate. A Gravure cylinder doesn't care how many times you set it up for production. A Flexo plate suffers each time you mount and unmount it. And that's the big difference between Gravure and Flexo. Sometimes we talk about, this print run is only, let's say, 10,000 meters. But it gets ordered 10 times during its whole design lifetime. Just making that up. But you can clearly see, you will not do that with one Flexo plate. But you will be easily able to do that with a Gravure cylinder. So if you think about the one-time costs for the tools, you also have to consider how many times, which you might not know at the very beginning, will this design actually be printed? How many reprints will there be throughout the whole design lifetime? That is an interesting question to me, and I haven't received clear answers because there are so many different perspectives on what a short run actually is. For some, it's 5,000 meters, for some 10,000, for some 20,000, for some it's 100,000, for others it's even 200,000. And again, it doesn't matter if we're talking about meters or square meters, it's just to get an idea. The perception of what we define as a short run is so different. The perception of what technology is more capable for short runs is also very hard to distinguish. So, what criteria do you use in order to define a short run and to actually evaluate which is more efficient, more lucrative, and most effective in terms of printing technologies for your product, and why? Let me know in the comments. See you next time.